Hello to those of you who've joined us. My name's Andy. I'll be introducing the webinar today. We've just got 20 odd people in so far, another 150 to go apparently, so just bear with us. No pressure on Jeff to deliver an amazing webinar on the CCSP, so
No pressure at all.
we'll just give it to a minute and then we'll get going with who we've got, so we're not all waiting too long. All right, I'm going to get going for good timekeeping hygiene. Welcome to our webinar on CCSP, cloud certification. Hopefully it's something that you're thinking about or taking part in already. And it certainly, as the title says, it's a great qualification to elevate your career. I'm Andy Johnston. I'm the head of training for IT governance. I look after the global delivery. This is one of our many courses in the portfolio. I'm very pleased to be introducing the webinar today, and Jeff, who will introduce fully in a sec. In terms of IT governance, just a brief overview. IT governance are specialists in GRC. So across that sector, we have books, software, standards, we have training courses, and we deliver consultancy services around cyber and data protection. Our specialism, if there was one, is 27001. And as part of that, we've helped more than 1,300 organizations globally gain and maintain 27001 compliance. You can see we've trained over 15,000 people. That number grows every time we present this, so it's already out of date. But we've delivered to more than 15,000 delegates. We've covered 7,000 plus Cyber Essential certs, and more than 2,000 people use our software to help with our governance, risk and compliance challenges. That's just a kind of brief overview. In terms of training from IT governance, what can you expect? Well, close to world class is the answer. You can see from the trust ratings there from Trustpilot. We score very, very well, and our NPS scores are 63 to date, and world class is set at 70, so we're fighting to get over that line. What I can tell you is Jeff, who I'll fully introduce in a second, scores pretty much close to 100%, 100 net promoter score, and is one of the best instructors I know in the world. So that's part of your introduction, Jeff. Don't want to embarrass you too much.
Thank you.
In terms of this session, we've got mute on for all participants, but do message in the chat, and I will support Jeff with making sure you get your questions answered. You'll get a full copy of the recording and the slides, which it's only a small deck, so there's not a lot in there. So it's mainly about listening and contributing. Now we are up to 46 people now. Well done. Last but not least, let me introduce you to Jeff. Like I said, one of the best instructors that I know. He's an acting CISO, helps us out a lot. We've worked for years together now, and you can see his qualifications there. He's trained more individuals to pass and work with these certifications than almost anyone I know. So no one better to talk to you about the subject than Jeff himself. So Jeff, I'll segue into you, and well, basically over to you, yeah.
Cheers. Appreciate it. Greetings, folks. Good to meet everybody, although I'm not really meeting you. You're getting to meet me. I hope to get to meet you in a future class. Obviously, we hope that you're going to join us for a CCSP at some point, or a CISSP, or any of the courses that I teach. But I always like to start off with just a little introduction on myself. I am an actual Chief Information Security Officer for a company here in the United States of America. As you can tell from my accent, I am from across the pond. So while I do instruct, it is a part-time role for me. It feels very full-time because I take it very, very seriously. But I've been asked by a number of organizations to teach full-time for them, and I choose not to. As much as I love teaching, the reason I don't is that I believe remaining relevant in the industry is probably one of the most key characteristics that you can have as an instructor, because there's one piece which is academia of what we teach, and then there's the other piece of the real world and how it's actually applied. And I think that one of my better strengths in how I describe and how I educate is helping you relate what is often very complicated book material into the real world and how you're actually going to apply it in your role. And so that's why I choose to continue working and doing this, because I am actually very, very passionate about instruction and helping people. I've been teaching cybersecurity boot camps for about 10 years now, predominantly in the United States. But a few years ago, I got to start working with ITG, and it's been phenomenal because I've really enjoyed kind of the cultural shift and learning about other cultures and other individuals from all over the world, which ITG has really opened me up to, which has been fantastic. In fact, while I did start teaching in the United States, I have actually resigned that position thanks to my efforts with ITG. I haven't even told Andy yet. I'm no longer teaching in America. This just happened last week. I had to pick one, and I chose ITG because they are a stellar organization who has really done a great job of supporting me and bringing me into the classroom with students from all over the world, which I really appreciate. So with all of that said, as you can tell from my background, and actually we're missing one, I just got my GICSP a couple of months ago as well. That's the critical infrastructure. It's kind of like, it's not the CISP level, but it's similar to a CISP, but for critical infrastructure. So for like manufacturing, power and water delivery, etc. So I am very passionate about learning and about education. I like to stay on top of everything because I genuinely believe that cybersecurity, GICSP, I genuinely believe that information security is the kind of the key to an organization's future. You can have the greatest products and widgets in the world and services. None of that matters when the right insider threat hits you or the external threat hits you. All that stuff goes away briefly. And how quickly you're able to respond is very much determined based on the knowledge, education, and experience of those that you employ. So I want to make sure that anybody that comes through my course is prepared to handle these things for their organization. All right. So all that said, we're going to talk through a number of elements that are going to be very specific today to the CCSP, but what you're going to find is that I'm going to continually reference it as a generalized subject because the CCSP is, it has some fundamental differences from the CISSP, but largely, if you talk to most people, they will tell you that the CCSP is kind of like the CISSP for the cloud. And that's an important distinction because there is a great deal of carryover between the two, but there is a pretty sizable chunk of the CCSP that is not covered by the CISSP, and it is arguably the future of what we are going to encounter in the workforce and what we are going to deal with as security professionals, because it's not really so much a transition to the cloud anymore. I don't know many companies that are not in some way already in the cloud. So it's not like the cloud is coming anymore. I was dealing with that 20 years ago when I started in security. We're there, we're in it. And so what are you doing to reflect and recognize those unique challenges that the cloud brings? And so first, I just kind of want to briefly talk about the relevance to the to our industry. So listen, the CCSP being very cloud-focused security is critical because what most organizations have been learning over the last 10 years is that at first, when we all transitioned, I don't know how, we've got a lot of people on this webinar, so some of you are probably from varying backgrounds. If you've been around as long as I have or longer, you remember when the cloud showed up. And if you worked in security at the time, you said, oh, absolutely not. We are not going to move to the cloud. That's too risky. And then sure enough, over time, the business won and they forced us into the cloud. And in fact, not only that, but I was actually kind of an early advocate of the cloud because it was my belief that if we actually treated this infrastructure better than we treated our on-premise infrastructure, we stood an opportunity to do things the right way from the ground up. Um, that view was not always shared by everyone around me, but in time it has become shared. But there are some very unique risks that exist in the cloud that you don't deal with as much when you are in an on-premise environment. And so understanding um, how that uh, how that all plays together is fundamental now, because you probably already know. Cybersecurity, the last estimate was there was 2 million open positions in cybersecurity across the globe, and that there is not qualified individuals to fill them. So the basic understanding of the laws of supply and demand tell you that this is a great field to be in. There isn't people to do it. And I would argue that while that's true, it's even worse for those to have cloud knowledge and cloud experience. It's hard enough to find a security person. It really is. But when you want a security person that also has cloud knowledge, you're reaching for the stars because there aren't very many. And we need them now more than we've ever needed them. And so when we talk about the CCSP credentials relevance in our industry, it doesn't get any more relevant right now than it is because, like, for example, I told you I'm a CISO for a company here in America. I've been trying to hire a role for months. I've had several roles I've been hiring for several months. And I'm struggling to find the talent that I need. And heavens forbid, I need someone with cloud security. It just, what I often end up having to do is hiring aptitude and then training them. You can imagine working for me is not easy because I teach courses inside of my company for students, my employees to come to so they can get certified. And I expect them to continue to build their knowledge and advance where they are in the industry. So if you ask about the relevance and the significance in our industry, I can't imagine a certification right now that would be more relevant. The only thing that's even close would be the CISSP. And again, that doesn't cover the cloud. It covers, IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, some of the basics, but it doesn't dig into the in-depths of understanding how to secure cloud infrastructure. Okay. So it is arguably, in my opinion, one of the most relevant certifications that you could come into or work for if you're going to spend your time and effort. This, in my opinion, would be the one. With the CCSP, you're not only learning the foundational elements of cybersecurity, but you are also, I'm sorry, I'm looking around for I was hoping it was going to be handy. So to give you an example, I always like to show these books, although my little filter is not going to do well. The CISSP book is very, very thick. It's, I don't know, what is that, about 55 millimeters thick, quite thick. The CCSP is a little bit smaller, but not much. And the reason for that is that you are covering a great deal of the fundamentals of security, but then we're tacking on an extra 30% that are very, very specific to the cloud. So some things we don't need as much of, the on-premise security for the CCSP, obviously, because we're doing things in the cloud. So when you come into the course, you are going to not just learn the fundamentals of cybersecurity, you're going to learn how those are applied in the cloud. Makes you very, very relevant to your employers who are operating in the cloud now, or even if you still have some of the, and I recognize that some industries are still a little slow to adopt cloud, and that's okay. But as they do, they're going to need industry experts like ourselves to come in and help them stand this up. And again, the laws of supply and demand really dictate that you're going to be far more valuable than you were after having this certification than you were before, because there just isn't very many people that know how to do this. So I think what we're going to see as an industry trend over the next 5 years, especially right now, the desire for a CISSP is still very, very high. And I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. But what we're seeing is that the CCSP is starting to really pick up steam because companies are realizing that just hiring a CSP is not always going to be good enough for those companies that are heavily reliant on cloud. They need someone that has been specifically and uniquely trained for cloud risks. Okay, so also want to dig in a little bit and talk about some of the specific risks and challenges in cloud environments. Now, in truth, many of these risks are the same as what we dealt with on premise. The difference being that because the infrastructure is kind of removed, right? It's not our infrastructure, it's someone else's infrastructure in the cloud. We tend to forget certain things. We tend to not have that hands-on where we can go and see our data center and go look at our on-premise and wire up and look at it directly. And I've noticed personally that staff tends to start taking some of the advantages of the cloud for granted, big time. They just automatically accept all these amazing layers of security that are provided by the cloud, and they don't question them anymore. And that is actually creating a very dangerous and almost a toxic situation internally, because when we do see failures of these things, and we have seen many of our CSPs, so CSP stands for Cloud Service Provider, when we do see our CSPs having failures, everyone is just dumbfounded. They're aghast, like, oh, I had no idea. I can tell you personally, when EC2 went down here in the United States, this was a number of years ago, some junior analyst transposed a dot and a slash, and it wiped out the entire directory of all assets on EC2. It knocked down the United States of America's e-commerce for the better part of a day. It was a catastrophe, an absolute catastrophe, and no one knew what to do. No one was prepared for this. That is indicative of those lacking to recognize the layers of security that must exist. When you work in security, you are absolutely fundamentally required to be responsible for three things. You will learn this in any security class. It is known as the CIA triad. That is confidentiality. We're all pretty familiar with that. You're responsible to make sure that you keep things private that aren't supposed to be seen unless you're authorized. The I stands for integrity. That means that we protect the information and make sure that it can't be modified by someone that lacks authorization. Okay. But here's the big one. This is the one that everybody in security likes to forget, and this is where it really plays home with the CCSP. It's the A. The A stands for availability. We are responsible as security professionals to ensure that any systems with which we are a steward of, or we're responsible for, which is basically everything in an organization, is available to the principals when they need it, period. And that brings a huge bucket of responsibility and requirements to anything that we do, whether it's on premise or in the cloud. Everything you've ever heard about business continuity or disaster recovery or incident response, all of those buckets are directly related to the availability aspect of the CIA triad. And when you move to the cloud, everyone thinks, oh, well, it's fine. Nothing can go wrong in the cloud. It's so scalable, and they've got all this redundancy built in. It's not true. I mean, that is true, but it doesn't mean that there can't be failures. We've had countless failures. You can look them up all day long. CSPs struggle just like any other company does. Even with all their redundancy in play, we are responsible to make sure that we have redundancy in play amongst the CSPs and amongst our provisioned resources, what we are responsible for. You will learn how to do that in this course. You will learn how to make sure that you are understanding specific availability risks as it relates to cloud and what you can do about that. In addition, you're going to learn a great deal about some of the traditional things that you're used to hearing about. You're going to hear about data breaches. It's a little bit different in the cloud than it is on premise. A lot of similarities, but there is some unique and independent challenges that exist there as well. The biggest one that I'm pretty sure all of you have heard of is misconfigurations. We've all heard about S3 buckets not getting configured properly. That is common, right? We've heard this. We know that when we're developing things in the cloud, if things aren't configured properly, because we just don't think about it, we take things for granted, that creates a scenario where it doesn't even have to be attackers, frankly. It could just be curious individuals can uncover the elements in your that you have stored in your storage systems, in your data, your cloud databases. Terrible, right? We don't want this thing. Account hijacking becomes even more prevalent. Any type of data loss. Here's a big one right here. API configuration and security. APIs, I mean, I would be shocked if your organization is not doing vast amounts of work through APIs to back-end systems. Vast amounts of work. If you're not doing adequate work to protect those APIs, you're setting yourself up for failure, both from an availability perspective, but more importantly, from a confidentiality perspective. Okay, fundamentals that must be covered. You're going to learn about that. Big one that we're going to talk about in the CCSP is insider threats. Insider threats in cloud environments are just significantly more impactful than what we've typically seen just on-premise. And another one is just your lack of visibility and control. Right? We lose some visibility with cloud service providers. When you learn about the different layers of IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, you will begin to understand at those different layers, we have different amounts of influence and visibility. And we have to often find compensating controls because we can't just readily go grab the logs from our IaaS or our PaaS or SaaS providers. Period. You just can't. I mean, you can in time once they've been scrubbed, but you might have to wait 12 hours or a day, just depends on the CSP you're working with, before you can get a copy of the logs. Well, if you're doing an incident response investigation, you can't wait that long. So you have to have compensating controls in place. And there's elements that we talk about there. And then, of course, the big one, I guess, I don't know if it's a big one, but it's one that is often very much overlooked by cybersecurity, is basic compliance and legal issues. Where is your data? Where do you have it replicated? Are you allowed to have it in that jurisdiction? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on what kind of data it is. Depends on the regulatory scrutiny with which you're under. And if you're not building your programs to be respectful of this and understand those lines, you're an auditor's favorite toy, right? They're going to come in, they're going to get you, and they're going to have all these findings, and it could cost your company significant dollars in penalties and failure of compliance, etc. So these are all elements that you're going to learn about, in addition to the fundamentals of cybersecurity when you come through a CCSP bootcamp with me. Now, I'm looking at the layout here. I want to talk about a little bit around career growth opportunities. Listen, depending on where you're at in your role, a lot of people like to come in and get a certification to help them kind of go to that next level. CCSP is going to do a great job of that, but I want to caution you about something. The certification is very valuable on its own, okay? But the real value that you're going to get out of this, and you ask any of my students that have come through any of my boot camps here, the real value that you get out of achieving a kind of a significant certification like the CCSP. This is a big one. This is one of the, arguably, I would argue that this is next to the CISSP, one of the biggest ones that you can get because it's huge, hugely relevant. But the real value that you get is not going to be the certification. I know that sounds crazy. I realize that's why most of you would spend your hard-earned money to come in and learn this. That isn't the real value. The real value is what you're going to learn. It is going to be the changes that you experience while going through this educational program and advancing yourself. Yes, you will be capable of earning more money. Yes, you might be. It might make you capable to move up to the next rung on the ladder at your enterprise environment. What you're going to find, I just had my one-on-ones today. So I do, one of the things that we do in these classes is what's called one-on-ones. And that's where you meet with me independently 4 times throughout the course for 30 minutes each. And we talk about your specific and unique struggles and what the challenges of what you of what you're experiencing. And I help you get over those hurdles. Okay. In my one-on-ones this morning, 3 out of my 4 people made my day. They made my day. They told me something that I love to hear from my students, which is, Jeff, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm already using this knowledge at work. I'm already understanding things differently from the architects. I'm using terms now that were unexpected. I am getting the attention of people by the way I'm speaking. And that you're going to find is going to be the real value beyond just getting some more money. And I know that's really all we want, but um, you'll begin to feel very relevant. You will begin to truly speak a different language. You will see risk very differently at the end of this course. You will speak it differently. You will understand the business perspective and initiatives of how we address risk. How often, for those of you out there, I see there's quite a few people on here. I've got probably a mix of students. I'm used to this. For the last 10 years, I've got students that are very strong technically and very weak on business, some that are very strong on business and very weak on tech. For those of you that are very strong on tech and weak on business, how many times have you worked hard, discovered some terrible risk, and you relay this to management and they do nothing about it? And you're just dumbfounded. You're just completely caught off guard. Like, how do they not take this serious? Why do they not see this as impactful as I do? I'm going to help you understand, number one, why they don't see it the way you do. But number two, I'm going to help you learn to speak their language. Because as soon as you start speaking their language, they'll listen. They'll understand better. And you will put it in terms that they can grasp and that they can actually work with from a financial perspective to understand why they need to prioritize this risk that you discovered. Okay? So going back, really, really excited for the CCSP program because this will change your career. It will change your perspectives on security. It will change how you speak and how you kind of work with the world around you from a security perspective. So let's keep going just a little bit and talk about what this course looks like. So first and foremost, I started 10 years ago. I taught a 1-week boot camp. I taught the CISSP. I taught a 1-week boot camp. And my intention at the time, the company that had approached me, my whole intention at the time was to basically take a couple of weeks of PTO every year and teach a few boot camps to earn a few extra dollars. Seemed like a great way to burn up some extra PTO that I would have. But right after I taught that boot camp, and I'm very proud to say that every member of that 1-week boot camp passed their exam. Now, to be clear, on that 1-week boot camp, these were all very well qualified individuals. Okay, I don't recommend the 1-week boot camp for most people, but we'll get to that in a minute. But right after I taught that boot camp, my company at the time switched over to unlimited PTO. Now, I know you hear that and you think, well, Jeff, that sounds amazing. No, it's a conflict of interest because now every time I want to take PTO to teach a class, I'm earning more money from someone else. It's a problem. And so back then I developed what I used here in the United States was a 10-week course. And the 10-week course was great. It was a smashing success. And I learned so much along the way. And throughout teaching, and I never taught another 1-week boot camp again until ITG approached me and needed me to teach a 1-week boot camp for them in a kind of a pinch. I came over and did it and we had great success. Andy was doing a lovely job, and thank you for the kind words, Andy, of my net promoter score and my kind of how my students receive me. And so, of course, that brought about the conversations of, hey, Jeff, we're looking at doing this 13-week course. What do you think about building this and teaching this for us? And of course, I was thrilled to do so. So there's something that most people don't realize at the difference between the 1-week and the 13-week boot camp, which is the 1-week boot camp it's very, very difficult. You know, the CISSP, for example, is 1,400 pages. I think the CCSP is maybe 1,200. For you to actually learn that in a week is exceptionally complicated. Now, guess what? I taught that 1-week boot camp, got lots of successful candidates. It was fantastic. But my ability to cram the fundamentals into your head in a 1-week period, great, I can do that. And okay, and yep, maybe if you are qualified enough, you go and pass that exam. Good. How much did you really learn? Really? You learned enough to pass the exam. And if you have a great background and lots of experience, well, then even better, maybe some of that you actually learned a few things. But now let's take the students that I've had over the years that are in a 10-week or now a 13-week boot camp and talk about what they learn. Because now it doesn't matter if you have 10 years of experience and you're just this uber geek in security and IT. You don't have to do that anymore. We take beginners. We have people that with zero cybersecurity experience that have come through, and I mean zero. One of them works for ITG. I'm not going to call him out. He came through my CISSP boot camp with no IT background, no IT experience, no security knowledge whatsoever. He went through my 13-week course and he passed his CISSP. That's what this course can do. It can take people from the beginner level all the way up to the advanced level and create a CISSP, or now a CCSP, out of you, which is wonderful. But the big benefit that nobody really talks about is beyond the certification, you're going to really know this content really well. You're going to speak it about as well as I do at the end of the course. You're going to pass your exam, and you're going to go out and carry with you the flag of being a cybersecurity professional in the cloud. And that's going to impact and influence change at your organization. It's going to help you to speak with more confidence and clarity around cybersecurity topics and initiatives. It's going to get the attention of those around you. They're going to notice a change in you and how you talk about these things, and you're going to be able to back it up with actual best practice, with real documentation on why we do things the way we do. Not just that we need to do them this way, but why we do them this way. And you're going to understand what I like to reference in my classes as the security butterfly effect. And it's understanding how a change over here rolls through an entire organization, and you can begin to kind of anticipate what's going to happen with the changes that you make. That doesn't happen typically as much in a 1-week boot camp. It just doesn't. The 13-week courses, you'll master that. If you give me your time and you follow the program, you're going to master it. So what does it really look like? In reality, for most students, you're going to spend 1 hour every single day studying. You're going to spend an hour and a half in lecture with me 1 day a week. And you're going to utilize a combination of different study techniques and tactics that I'm going to teach you. I'm going to teach you how to learn. A lot of people don't realize that maybe they don't know how to learn, or they have forgotten how they learn best because they haven't been in college or school in a long time. I'm going to help you relearn how to learn, because I have 4 children. I am not good at teaching children. I will tell you that. I just don't do well with it. But with adults, I do well because I understand those unique challenges, because we do have unique challenges. We're very busy. Kids, other commitments, sports for the kids. You've got your job, and if you're lucky, you only have the 1 job. Lots of people I deal with have 2 jobs. You've got all the conflict going on with your family and all the things that just are huge distractions. How on earth can I be bothered to learn this much content with all this stuff going on? I'm going to help you. I'm going to show you ways that we do this. Okay. There is a number of things that I'm going to have you doing. The first one is you're going to learn. I do a whole session on how to use artificial intelligence to help you with your education. And I'm going to tell you that in the last 2 or 3 years that I've been doing that, I have watched the rates of education rapidly accelerating. I've got students that are blowing past where I expect them to be very quickly, thanks to their utilization of AI with their learning. I'm going to have you listening to certain podcasts. I'm going to have you reading certain articles. Yes, you are unfortunately going to spend a lot of time in your book, and I do mean a lot of time. You're going to spend quite a bit of time because you're going to read that whole book, believe it or not. But we're going to do it a little piece at a time, and I'm going to teach you some very unique ways on how you're going to take notes, because it is not the typical note. I do not have people take typical notes. I don't want you writing anything out of the book. I have very unique ways that I have my students do this, and these things all add up to success. So if you've been struggling with how to tackle something like the CCSP or even a CISSP, I will tell you, I do believe in my program. I do believe in ITG's program. We have built a world-class program that works. You will learn it. If you come in and commit the time to me, you show up to class, you have your camera on, you answer questions when asked, you join in the conversation, perhaps you even join in the study groups. That's another little bonus there. You're going to be successful. That's the reality. That's what happens for pretty much every single student that comes through my course. Now, that is one more benefit that I forgot to mention. You will find um, that you're going to become part of a network. You're going to become part of a real network of people. You will probably end up making friends with these people. You will undoubtedly end up, ideally, hopefully, making friends with me. I love to keep up with my students. I love talking to people. When you're done with class and you pass, I'm still not really done with you because I will keep up with you. I will hopefully connect you on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me and say hi sometime, ask questions if you need help, like, hey, what's the next certification? We will get to build a relationship with each other, and you will more importantly build a relationship with the other students in class. Inevitably, in almost every single class that I have, somebody mics up and goes, hey, you know what? On Tuesdays at like 6 o'clock, I do questions and answers the way Jeff teaches us to do them. If anybody wants to join me, here's a Zoom link, and boom, study groups start forming. And that is fantastic because you start learning from other voices and you start spending unique ways and time learning new content. And so you will end up building some fantastic network connections. Yeah. So you can go to the next slide if you want. So as we are, let's go for questions. I've been going for a while and I saw a few questions popping up in the thing. Who has questions here? I see 4 of them.
Thanks, Jeff.
Let me start with, they're both from the same person.
So I've got a question from Stephen around, he landed a cybersecurity accreditor role and
Okay.
he recommended he work on CISP over CCSP. But he's saying this webinar is making him think otherwise. So would you recommend CCSP instead? Also, is it pointless to see CCSP and then CSISP? Or is it worth the effort?
I've got good news for you. Yep. All right. I got good news for you. Here's the deal. If your company is telling you they want you to get your CISP, I would do what my company tells me, frankly. However, I'm going to, and you can ask any of my current CISP students, every single one of them, when they come to me and they go, Jeff, I passed. And we're kind of laughing and we're celebrating over the phone or whatever. And I go, that's amazing. Now get back to work. Because you are never as smart as you're going to be after your studies are over. And if you wait 6 months for your next certification, you're not starting over, but you're making it hard on yourself. There is a ton of overlap between the CCSP and the CISSP. Not 100%, not by any stretch. Okay. If you go get your CISSP, you still have your work cut out for you for the CCSP, and vice versa. If you go get your CCSP, you still have your work cut out for you on the CISSP. So what I would recommend is, it doesn't, to me, I don't think it matters what order you go in. You could do either. I will tell you that in terms of relevance, if you plan to stay at that company that you're at for a long time, I don't know who they are or what they are. If you plan to stay there for a long time, I would probably do what my boss tells me. If my boss tells me to get the CISP, that's what I'm doing. But if you're not sure how long you're going to be there, or you are committed to getting both, I would just go back and say, hey, listen, I talked to the instructor. And honestly, I'm really passionate about the CCSP. I'm going to get that first, but he told me it's not a waste because it's going to make my path into the CISSP much easier, because you'll be very fresh at that point, especially if you do a back-to-back boot camp. You'll be very, very fresh at that point on all of the knowledge that you got, all the foundational and fundamental knowledge. So it's going to be very easier. It's going to be a lot easier for you to tackle the kind of the trickier stuff in the CISSP. And in fact, you might end up being a great person to run a study group for me. I always love it when somebody like hops up and I really love it for the people that have previous certifications. It really helps the whole class. I show up to some of the study groups sometimes just for fun. I try to be quiet though, because I'm a distraction if I don't. So I would encourage you to make your decision based on those kind of elements I just laid out for you. And I hope that answers the question. And if it doesn't, please feel free to come back with more. Is this course eligible for LCAS?
So
Is that like CPEs for you guys?
So Stephen, with this one, so the question is the course eligible for LCAS? So that's enhanced learning credits. This is a um, a forces kind of training
Okay.
drawdown. So, Stephen, the short answer is depending on which provider you use. So, IT governance aren't currently registered with LCAS to enable you to draw down and pay for the course through that process. But there are other providers out there, just not with the kind of 13-week format because it's pretty unique out there. What I would say on that is we are looking to get back on board with LCAS. So maybe kind of February, March time, we would be able to allow you to draw down on that.
I will give some
That's the yeah.
Thank you for
Go on,
that,
Jeff.
Andy. I will give some good news to those of you who have to get CPEs for other certifications. As your instructor, and ITG can issue a statement stating how many hours you were in class. So if you have CPE, or you might hear them referenced as CEUs, if you have CPE or CEU requirements, the time that you spend in class studying, and in fact, depending on the requirements of whoever you're providing the CPEs to, even some of your self-study time can be claimed as CPEs as well. Now, it's different from LCAS. I'm not familiar with that, but the CPEs for other certifications, yes, you can use your CISSP certification study time and in-class time for, and I can issue you a statement stating that you were in class X number of days for X number of hours, and you'll be able to claim those credits.
So listen, we've got quite a number of you on here. I'm sure you have a question, so take your time to do that. Jeff, I had a couple. Prerequisite wise, what's the absolute prerequisite for taking one of these these courses, and in terms of work experience or qualifications?
Let's talk about the actual. So here's the good news. Because there's prerequisites for success in this, and then there is prerequisites for actually getting the certification. Now, the
Yeah.
CCSP, and they change it from time to time, so I went and double checked it before this because I wanted to make sure. So you do have to have a minimum of 5 years of paid full-time experience in IT. 3 of those years needs to be in security, and 1 of those years needs to be in one of the domains of cloud security. Now, I know you're like, well, wait, if I'm getting the certification, I don't have a job in cloud security. It's okay, because the domains of cloud security, so just to be clear, there's 6 major domains. We have architecture and design, data security, platform and infrastructure security, app security, security operations, and then here's the big one that is not cloud-based: legal, risk, and compliance. So if you've even done anything remotely loosely connected to any of those domains, it's going to qualify for that 1 year. That's what it requires to actually get the certification. Now, the good news is you can get something known as the associate. So all of the ISC squared certifications offer what's called the associate, which is beautiful, because I've been teaching this for years, and the number of times I've had students come through. I've had students in America that are high school students. They're not even in college yet, come through and pass their CISSP with me because of the way our program works. The downside is, historically, they weren't even allowed to claim anything on their CISSP. They couldn't even use the initials. They couldn't talk about it at all because you did not meet the minimum requirements to get it. You had to wait until you had met those minimum requirements. They would kind of start a clock on you, and you had like 5 years or 7 years to get your 5 years of experience. And if you didn't, then you had to retest. And if you did, they would go ahead and convert you to a full CISSP. But now they have this associate program, which is wonderful, because if you pass the exam and you don't meet these minimum requirements, it's okay, because you can declare yourself an associate of ISC squared CCSP, meaning you've passed the exam, you just don't yet have the years of experience. So it's nice because you can actually go put that on LinkedIn. You can talk about it without jeopardizing your standing with them. So those are the actual requirements to get it. in terms of who do I think is a fit for the course, if I'm being blunt, I'd like to give you a direct answer and say, oh, you got to have this. You don't. We've got proof of multiple students that have come through with no experience that are achieving this objective by following the program. So, do I think that's ideal? No, I would rather you have some background because you are going, it's an uphill battle to do that, but it can be done. We've seen it many, many times. Ideally, for the CCSP, I would expect you to have 1 to 3 years of at least IT experience. That's going to be an easier path for you. The more experience you have, believe it or not, can create new challenges. And this is, I'm going to just briefly talk on this before we go to the next question, Andy. This exam is not testing you on the real world of security. It is testing you on what they think the real world of security should be. So it's what's in the book, right? That's what the exam is on, not on what really happens. So as we get students with 20 years and 30 years of IT and security experience, that presents a unique challenge to me. Don't worry about it. I can help you. I've been dealing with it for 10 years. The challenge is I have to force you to unlearn a few things you've learned in your vast experience in the years in the industry and accept that the best practice is what it is actually supposed to be. And don't worry, we have techniques to help you with that. I teach you ways in the questions and how you read the questions to make sure you're not answering from experience and you're instead answering from academia. Next
It's a
question.
good one, Jeff. I don't think we've had any more, but we have got a couple of items to cover. I have one more question which I think people will be interested in, and before it leaves my head, try to get it out. So in the actual exam, what does it look like? How long is it? What should people expect?
So I will warn you that ISC squared exams they're not the nightmare they used to be. All right. Just like our grandparents tell us that they had to walk uphill in the snow both ways to school and home. All right. I'm going to give you my uphills both ways. When I took the CISSP exam 15 years ago, I guess, I don't know how long ago it was. It was not an adaptive test. It was 250 questions and 6 hours long. It was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare. Now they have switched to these adaptive style. Now, the CCSP, to the best of my knowledge, is still not adaptive, but it is a reduced number of questions. However, that may change. So now I've got great news for anyone that's taken this thing. It is half the nightmare it used to be. Now it is a 4-hour time limit, and you're going to answer 125 questions, and you have to get 700 out of 1,000 points. Now, I hesitate to even answer that part because there is unfortunately zero transparency around the exam process. There is no transparency. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. They do not tell you how you did. If you pass the exam, they will not tell you how well you did. They just tell you that you passed. If you were to fail the exam, they don't tell you how you did. They just tell you what domains you need to improve on. So the 700 out of 1,000 points is irrelevant because you're not going to know how many points each question is worth. They're all worth varying degrees. And for those of you doing basic math and going, oh, well, that sounds like a 70%. It's not. In reality, that 700,000, by the way they weight these questions, is really closer to an 80%. It is a very difficult achievement. And if you don't properly prepare, there's a high likelihood you will not pass on your first try. In fact, ISC squared exams are known for a super, super low first test pass rate. That is not the experience for my students, but at one point they were publishing exam pass rates. The CISSP, for example, had a 17% first test pass rate at one point. It was abysmal. Nobody passed that thing on the first try. Very, very difficult. Now, my students, no, I'm up in the 99% at least, because we have a method that works. We have a model that works really, really well. So you will spend up to 4 hours. Most students of mine that come through usually finish. I mean, everybody reads at different speeds and whatnot. Most students do not spend the entire 4 hours, but you're given 4 hours to answer 125 questions. And of those 125 questions, it's important to understand that as of the last time they published this, 25 of those 125 questions don't actually count towards your grade. They are what's called curation questions. That's how they curate exam questions for the next exam. You won't know which 25 it is that don't count towards your grade, but 25 of them likely, and they change it from time to time. On the CISSP last year before the last update, 50 of the questions did not count towards your grade. Now it's 25. So it changes from time to time, and I'll keep you up to date on that whenever you come to class.
Sure. Just a point I'd like to make on the back of some stuff Jeff has said there. If I drop back a slide, the blending learning model that Jeff and I have worked on, you can see the kind of headlines there, but a couple of aspects are missing really, which, they're really quite important. In addition to what you see there, you get 4 half-an-hour mentoring sessions. That's focus mentoring. Jeff's always there to talk to and get advice from, but you get a personalized study plan. So it's dependent on your baseline, your conversation with Jeff, and how you learn best, and where Jeff sees things going. But if you think about a driving instructor analogy or a gym instructor analogy, you've got someone there guiding you through the whole of the 13 weeks. You're doing your workouts, they're there incentivizing you, shouting at you, motivating you, but you also get a personalized plan. And in terms of the exam, with IT governance on this course, there is an exam pass guarantee. So if you don't pass your exam the first time, IT governance will pay for a resit. Now that is dependent on your driving instructor, Jeff, saying you're ready to go for your driving test. But as long as Jeff approves you for that, which will mean he'll have to be happy that you've done everything needed, IT governance will be confident enough to pay for your retake. So again, that just kind of backs up Jeff's 99% aspect. The reason we do that is we have very low pass rates on the back of it. So that's just one point I wanted to make.
And you meant very low fail rates. We have very high pass rates.
Say again?
You said we have very low pass rates. He meant very high pass rates.
High pass rates, very low fail rates, I meant.
There you
go. Sorry. Just to recognize Brad's comments, Brad said, so true on CISP, had to separate what he saw in the field as what they wanted. So just going back to your point about real life and what the exam questions are. So that was a great share. Just a couple of slides, because there's no more questions in there. We're drawing down on
Brad just asked a question. Brad just asked one. CEU credits, typically depending on the governing body that you're submitting them to, all you have to do is submit the invitation. And obviously ITG is going to keep track of who attended and for how long they attended. So if there is an audit, they'll be able to show that you were here for the hour. You should be able to claim your CPEs or CEUs.
Yeah, definitely. Just making sure I've got no other questions yet.
Can I put a point on something you said, Andy, real quick? I want to point something out to this. I've been teaching this for 10 years. I've never come across a company, and frankly, it blows my mind that they do it. I've never come across a company that pays for the resit. I've only ever seen companies at most be willing to pay for you to come back to the course if you were to fail, which is good. That is a great value. It's a great benefit, not to knock it. I've never seen a company. I'll tell you this, the company I worked for in America did not do that. No company that I'm aware of offers that. That should tell you the level of confidence that we have in the program. That is I like to put a fine point on that because I don't think you'll find that anywhere else. I really don't. That's a big risk to take because that exam is not cheap. as you all probably know
Yeah,
if you've looked into this.
that's it. And there's a lot of confidence in Jeff and the instruction, but obviously the driving instructor kind of aspect of it is really helpful for you because going into a test not being ready is not a good experience. So
Right.
if you need more time, you take more time. And then another point on the learning, you get access to your materials for 12 months. Obviously, you stay in your peer group. You can chat to Jeff. So you take it when you're ready. Just to drive us towards wrapping up, unless more questions come in. Here, there are some free resources which you'll be able to access. So this deck will be sent to you. You can just click the link. You have free access to an infographic, a test quiz if you just want to have a go at seeing how you would fare with some of the typical questions. And there's a very useful blog there for you to have a read on just to further your kind of knowledge. And for everyone who's attended and for those listening to the recording, I believe as well, you have access to some discounts with IT governance. So at the moment, the cloud course, including the one Jeff is delivering, you can save 25% off an already competitive price. You can meet more one-to-one with Jeff on a meet the trainer session, so it's a bit more fireside chat, less webinar, so you can have a decent conversation on there, and there's far less than the people we have here. So if you're interested in talking more about it, please have a look at that and just book in for free. And in terms of implementing clouds, we have our cloud standards, 27017 and also 27018, which is something you can look at maybe after doing this, the kind of core training to help you learn what controls are needed in implementing a decent framework. And there's plenty of advice and guidance from our team, headed up by Donna. Some of you may know Donna, but lovely team. They've got great advice, and if needs be, they can connect you into Jeff directly or indirectly as well. So I think beyond that, you'll have how you can get in touch with us. But like I said, if you email us, you'll get to talk to Donna and the team. But you can also click into the Meet the Trainer with Jeff when it's next scheduled, and just have a fireside chat. I haven't seen any more questions come in. I see a few people dropping off, so maybe attention is waning and work pressures are coming in. You got anything to finish on, Jeff, before we wrap up?
I always have so many things to say, Andy. You know that. I'm an instructor. All I do is talk. Listen, I want to share two final points. The first point is for those of you that do not choose to come to a course, okay? Maybe you can't afford it. Maybe you decide not to, and you go, you know what? I'm going to self-study this one. I actually am fine with self-study on lots of them. The CCSP is the one that I'm not. I've had a lot of students self-study this. People that have come to me before coming to my course and said, I self-studied and I failed the thing. Because the academia that's currently been released, the books that they've released on the CCSP are insufficient. If you actually go out and look at the curriculum with which the books they use to build the curriculum, there's like 40 academic books they used to build the CCSP question bank. The one CCSP book, even the one that we give you, is by itself not enough. You have to take all this other stuff into account. That's where I come in. That's what I do for you. Well, we bring that in. So I can't tell you how other programs are going to do it. I can tell you that we do it well. So in terms of self-study, this is one where I've got to really caution you. Self-study is really, really complicated on this one. And finally, cannot encourage you enough to join us for the Meet the Trainer. Those are much smaller, it's usually like between 2, 5, 6 people, and we will talk. You'll hop on camera and we're going to talk about your unique challenges. I'll help you blaze a path. I really hope to see you in the course. If you can't tell, this is something I'm truly passionate about, and I enjoy every minute of helping people achieve this objective. So let's go. Let's get it for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen, just to wrap things up, on behalf of all the webinar attendees, Jeff, thank you ever so much. Your wisdom and expertise, very, very insightful, and hope everyone who attended. Hopefully, you've got some value out of it. Yeah, thanks, Neil. Very informative. I appreciate it. And some applause there for you, Jeff. You've done a great job, and
Cheers.
everyone appreciates it. So, on that note, more claps coming in. I'll let everyone drop off, and thank you ever so much for joining us today.
Everyone have a lovely day.
Yeah, have a lovely day.